Welcome to the Lifetime at Work podcast, episode number 15, the podcast where you learn about other real people and their careers. Yes, you might learn something here, but it also might inspire you about something relating to your life or bring more meaning to your career. I mean, we spend so much of our lives at work. How do we make the time count? My name is Greg Martin, and after 10 years on Bay Street in Toronto, I now own a food business called Farmer Prepared Meals. And in my spare time, I record this podcast. In this week's episode, we are talking about the world of fashion, a world that I know very little about, but we are chatting with a couple, actually, two people. They both run a fashion company themselves, and it's a really interesting story. They're relatively new, just starting out, but making the switch to their own business has been super interesting. So let's get going. If you're a fan of this podcast, you can go to lifetimeatwork.com, and there you can see all the episodes, see the platforms we're on, subscribe to the podcast, subscribe to the newsletter, all the stuff's there. So head over to lifetimeatwork.com. At the time of recording this, I mean, everyone is in intense lockdown here where we are in Ontario. A lot of the rest of the world in North America is in a similar fashion. But I wanted to mention what we are doing with Farmer Prepared Meals. It's the prepared meals company that I help run. We are delivering to more and more places, and it's just great, easy, simple meals that you can just heat up when you need a little break. They're made by real chefs. I used to own a restaurant. It is a restaurant no more, and now it is all about prepared meals to make things easy and convenient for you. You can always check out the website and use the code I know Greg, all one word, to get a bit of a discount there. And the website is farmr.ca. So in this week's podcast, as I mentioned, we are talking with a couple, Jordan and Chelsea. There are two people on the podcast, and they run a fashion company called CAALO. And if you want to check out what they are all about, I mean, I highly recommend you at least have a quick look. They've just got into Holt Renfrew. They're very excited here in Canada to be, I think, launching the brand and just doing all these things that they're doing. It's a ton of work, and they've been spending lots of time on it, and it's great to see them succeeding and doing this amongst a pandemic. But what we talk about in this is a bunch of things relating to just running a company themselves and venturing out. Chelsea has the fashion background. She worked at a few different places, Lululemon being one, and learned a lot. And so what kind of intrigued me a lot about both of them is just, why they decided that they wanted to own their own fashion brand. I mean, why not just work for one, or why not just wear the clothes, or, why go in and put the work in to do what they're doing, because it's a lot of work. It's very seasonal. There's a lot of investment in the designs and creating the jackets and doing all these things up front in advance. And it's just anyways, an interesting story to hear, what they are trying to get out of it and what they are trying to build with their company. So the things you probably need to know, again, we don't talk about it till a few minutes in, but it is jackets that we're talking about, and I will link in the show notes at lifetimeatwork.com if you want to see a video of what we're talking about and some pictures of the jackets. They're pretty cool. They're $1,000 jackets. They're higher end. So let's learn a little bit more about the fashion industry and what it's all about with Jordan and Chelsea. Jordan and Chelsea, welcome to the Lifetime at Work podcast. Thanks for joining me.
Thanks for having us.
Yeah, it's great.
Great. So I wanted to hand it to you to just, probably you're the best person, or the best people, I guess now I have to say. I've never had two people on the show, so I'm going to refer to you as one at times. But
one entity. Sometimes we are.
You are one.
But why don't you just describe who you are very quickly, pick who starts, and then maybe just give like a high level background kind of quickly, again, 2 minutes on what the business is that you're running now, and we'll kind of go from there.
Great. So I'm Chelsea. I'm one of the co-founders of CAALO, which is our functional outerwear brand that we started about, I guess, 2.5 years ago now. And so we're based in New York City, and I've been designing for mostly women's apparel in New York for 10 plus years. And then before that, went to design school in Toronto, so originally from Vancouver. And had a really great experience going to design school in Canada. They like really gave like a great foundation for more like the technical side of it, as well as the more artistic side of design. So it was a good foundation. And then from there, went to work for Lululemon Athletica, which is kind of one of Canada's I guess best clothing companies, success
Yeah.
stories.
Modest,
Yeah.
modestly best.
Well, success stories, I would say. Um, yeah, so worked for them, which was great. Just getting like a really good foundation of fit and technical apparel, and they're really into their material sciences, and so I think that gave me a really great foundation for pairing that with working in New York, which definitely is like a bit more fashion forward and trend driven. So marrying those was a good foundation for starting our own luxury outerwear brand.
And I'm Jordan. I'm the other half of CAALO here. I have a slightly different past and experience set. So I also am from Canada, um, and went to school in Ontario, studied business, and graduated just around the time. If I'm recalling correctly, I think it's around the time when Mad Men was starting to come out. So that was the all the hotness. So it was like, well, you know what? I think ad agency life will be kind of interesting. So I started my career at Cassette Communications, ad agency in Toronto, which was a great place for someone right out of school to kind of, I think, not only learn a little bit about the industry, but have some fun. Had a lot of good times there. And while I was there, actually, I was approached to run some live content for, at the time, the newly opening Yankee Stadium in New York. And so I was kind of thinking, well, I guess I have an opportunity to move from Toronto to New York. Who knows if this will come up again? So I kind of took that opportunity, jumped in, and that went really well and kind of evolved into an interesting dichotomy of experience and profession. So it's partial content, digital media, and live entertainment, and partial technology. So I don't know how much we want to get
Yeah.
into the details there, but
No, that's good. You got it. No, and I guess the one thing to mention is that there's two of you, and you're a couple though, and so you met, and then later decided, hey, we should start a business.
Yeah, so the funny thing is everyone assumes that we just moved to New York together, but I guess Canadians kind of are just attracted to each other.
yeah, a lot of our friends in New York will like initially meet people, and they're from the Commonwealth. A lot of Aussies,
Yeah.
and
Right.
so, yeah, we kind of just I don't know find
A
each other.
lot of people actually from, I would say, Ontario, majority Toronto, Ontario, Northern Ontario, moved down to New York.
Yeah.
Less so Vancouver, but I've definitely met other people from Vancouver. But we kind of have like a similar, I don't know, values, and most Canadians are really nice.
Right. Just
No
two super nice
cliches.
people. They find each other. Like it's just that's the story,
Yeah.
right? It just took New York to bring you together. That's great. So
Yeah.
I will ask you that probably later of yeah, how do you argue over these types of things? But so I guess so how long have you guys been sort of doing this, and how did you kind of get the initial idea and sort of um,
Yeah.
yeah, why create the company that you did?
Well, I think there's kind of a couple different things there, and you can attest to with farmer on your side,
Mhm.
but it wasn't really all right. Today is September 4th, 2016. I'm starting a business, right? It's kind of for at least for us, a very much an organic. Again, I think kind of similar to you guys with farmer. It was very much organic, starting something because you felt well, you're passionate about it, and you felt why can't I find this kind of
Mhm.
elsewhere.
Yeah.
Yeah, really trying to fill what we felt was a void in the market. So, being from Canada, the stereotype is our winters are pretty brutal. Vancouver, more, I would say, wet and like bone chilling cold. Toronto, more snow and just freezing temperatures. And then living in New York for 10 plus years, same kind of deal. So, we've both, I mean, I studied design, but you've always been into fashion and design, and so we just kept on talking about in like the women's and men's market how it was really difficult to find an outerwear piece that was aesthetically like beautiful and really well tailored and constructed, but had that functional aspect to it. And a lot of our friends, we always talk about this. When we started asking people like what they wanted in an outerwear piece, most majority of at least my girlfriends would be wearing their winter wool coat all year round. They had like their favorite black wool coat, and then they would wear it with a puffer jacket underneath, like a thin puffer jacket. Um, and it just seemed kind of ridiculous that you had to wear two coats to get that same aesthetic and function.
Yeah, and especially
Yeah.
when you're, going out and checking your coat, now you got to pay twice.
Yeah.
It's a two jacket, sir. Yes.
Exactly.
Yeah.
And inevitably, they'll lose one of the pieces or
Yeah.
something. And so it's kind of one of the benefits I think of, in New York is you meet so many people. There's just so many people, and most
Yeah.
people are transplants. So you get such a varying kind of experience set, and it's kind of on steroids because
Hmm.
any day of the week you can choose to go and kind of dive into a new kind of group of people or whatnot. So I think that was kind of one of the things we found that, well, if we can't even find it here in one of the busiest, densest cities,
Yeah.
well, maybe it really doesn't exist. And kind of that's where, when we started talking about it a couple of years ago, and we're doing some research, obviously Chelsea has a very technical background. So both from
Hmm.
a design, artistic perspective and also materials.
Yeah.
And so me not having much of that, traditionally speaking, I actually found a lot of my kind of, I guess you'd call it informal or training via osmosis,
Hmm.
was through a lot of just friends that we had in New York. A lot of my friends are really talented and have a lot of knowledge in things such as the fashion industry. And so some of them more on the menswear or on the street style, or even on the technical garments. And so just, your normal conversation isn't just what's happening on, the latest television or sports or whatnot. It's like a lot of our conversations with friends will circle around, a lot of latest films coming out, or fashion items
Hmm.
and design houses. So I think it's kind of like an interesting uh,
Like
marriage of
marriage, yeah.
places of where you get information. And I think that's kind of just more how people, maybe we'll get into that if you want later, Greg, of how
Yeah.
people kind of learn,
Hmm.
traditionally versus kind of more modern.
Yeah, like to me it sounds like there's this great like this foreign thing. Like I don't even know where I would try to find someone like Chelsea, I guess. I would think like I need someone who has experience in this field to tell me about it. But I don't even know if it's a good idea. Like right?
Yeah.
Like I'm not I can't even grasp and you're sort of saying like, hey, I couldn't find this. We're talking about jackets here, by the way.
Yeah.
I feel like we didn't. It's
Yeah.
you
Outerwear.
use the
Yeah.
term outerwear, but it's really jackets for the cold.
Yep.
Exactly.
Um,
Cold and wet.
and but I don't, I would say, hey, I don't even know if that would work. Like,
Mm.
wouldn't someone just do this or something like that? I mean, and that seems challenging. But that's me. What did you think would be the biggest challenge for you guys? Like, kind of starting out and I don't know, going into this business on your own.
Yeah. I mean, I think for me, I never really wanted to be like the face of a brand or do it because I wanted my name out there. It was more that we kept on talking about this and talking to friends and family about it. And everyone's like, it seems like a really great idea and your
Yeah,
experience and being in New York. And as Jordan was saying, like if you can't find that there, then there definitely is a market. Whether or not it's a niche market, there's a market for that.
Yeah.
yeah,
Um, but for me, I had so much experience designing, but for more established brands. So starting out from scratch and not having a like loads of money to do it either. We were definitely had to be scrappy and figure out
yeah,
how to do it. The plus was being in New York that we had like a great network of friends that had worked in sales for 10 plus years. And so they were kind of like our mentors, being like, you should do this, don't do that, don't waste your time on this and that. And like, you need to go show in Paris. And for us, we're like, really? Why can't we just show in New York? But it was definitely like the right step.
Yeah, there's a lot of those kind of functional things that um, but Chelsea's very much was in the design world, right?
Hmm.
But obviously it takes
So much
so
more.
much more on the production, the PR,
Yeah, there's a
the
ton of little
fashion.
elements in there of actually getting it. Like you can design something, and you guys don't even make it. I mean, you're then dealing. You have to find
Exactly.
someone to make your jacket, but then
Yeah.
you got to tell them, and it's incredibly detailed, right? Like I have two kids, and there's sometimes when I'm in this a kid's book, I know they're all made in China, and I know that the author is here, and I'm trying to figure out how did they communicate these little tiny intricate things about this thing to the person
Hmm.
there to like, and then I translate that I think to clothes too, where like you don't actually go and talk to something, like do you do it
So
over
we
how does it work?
Yeah, I mean that's actually one of the many reasons, frankly, why
we
we
started it.
make all the, as we were saying, coats, winter coats or
Hmm.
outerwear
Yeah.
in New York. Being able to have that face to face and
You can go,
delivering
okay,
what's
yeah, yeah,
needed. And there is, I mean, there's so many ways you could do it, and who knows if we have the right way, but I think we
Hmm.
found a way that so far works really well for us, where you have that human interaction, and you can kind of work through the design into the production because it's not a strict handoff. It's
yeah,
definitely kind of a fluid, and there is a feedback cycle there.
Hmm.
And to your example of books, well, that's kind of a um, hopefully slightly more prescriptive. You have your size and your specific type and whatnot, but you almost have arguably an unlimited canvas when you're looking at a lot of clothing. And I've learned a huge amount in the last couple of years just on minor things that I had no idea would make the difference. And that's where Chelsea's expertise comes in. Just the height of the armhole, how much
Hmm.
that means that you're able to actually move your arms and for you, Greg, to pick up your kids or something, if there isn't enough room just in that little part of the jacket that you wouldn't realize necessarily, it won't feel good. It won't function correctly. So there's a lot of those little things that you either learn or hopefully have been trained in the
Or
past.
hopefully have good partners. Like we've
Yeah.
worked with
right. They
some
tell
great
you,
factories, and starting out, we actually had some production consultants that helped kind of guide us on like which factories to use. And there's so much that goes into the production side of it, which when you're a fashion designer working for a bigger brand, you don't really touch on that. You're more just designing and your specialties in fit, but not necessarily like how do you actually produce 100 units of this, and how do you order fabric, and how do you
right?
deal with duties and shipping. And there's just so much that goes into creating
Yeah,
a
it
product.
it does seem like there's lots of things. So how do you? I mean, I'm curious, and because I want to get into some of the specifics, but I'm curious about like I almost as a primer really don't know anything about the fashion industry.
Hmm.
I've watched the How to Make It in America, that show, and so my impression is that to try to make a brand, you kind of have to weasel your way into something. You come up with a cool
Yeah.
pair of something, and then you wear them around and hope that people will notice you, and you try to talk to whoever you can, and you're just looking for that big break where a buyer says, "Hey, you know what? I like the way you said that, or this thing that you did," and you just kind of keep doing that and hope that it works out. Is that like how do you? But because I imagine you're up against just these huge companies
Oh
that
yeah.
have a ton of strength, a ton of money. They can make it for like a fraction of the cost that you can,
Exactly.
and I don't pay for models and all this stuff. Like how do you kind of compete with that? Isn't it? It sounds that sounds hard.
Hmm.
Is
There's a
it?
lot of competition. We were just talking about that, how it's easier and harder to start a brand nowadays with Instagram and having that platform. Like it really
Yeah.
is amazing, but it's also so daunting because there's so much that goes into it. Like, what is your brand voice? And from an aesthetic point of view, what do you put out there? But also, you do have that chance where an international buyer stumbles upon your account and they're like, this is really cool. I want to reach out, and they DM you. And same with stylists and models and
Yeah, it's a really interesting. We kind of found that you could very much, like, a lot of people do this. They start a brand basically with, well, there's no product, there's a vague
hmm
idea, a loose
Mhm.
idea of even what the idea is, and they
yeah,
just, they're very good at marketing, and they like,
branding.
yeah, putting it out there, and they're really good at that, and they create something, and then they see if there's demand, and then they make it. And,
Yeah.
that's
Right.
certainly a valid way to do it, and that's very much not the way we like to approach
hmm
things for many reasons, one of which we are certainly not expert
Yeah.
advertisers, but also I think we're, part of the real ethos and why we started this in the first place was, well, we got to be filling a need, and not just a need that people think they want, but more of something that having some expertise on the industry. I think we need to hopefully, even though we're small, try push the industry in that direction. And as we said, I think earlier, both ethically and sustainably producing everything was really important to us. And we can tell you some funny stories of how that conversation with our buyers over the last couple of
Well,
years has changed so dramatically.
who do you like? How do you primarily sell? Like, how do people typically find your stuff or purchase
hmm
it? Is it always through someone else,
So,
a store, a
yeah, so we decided to go more the traditional route, which is wholesale. So working with international retailers. Like we just launched in Canada with Holt Renfrew, which is kind of like I would say the holy grail for
yeah,
Canada.
yeah,
Um, a really amazing retailer. So that was super exciting. And what I was saying before was like we were really lucky, I think, in the beginning to be aligned with the right people, friends, and colleagues to kind of push us in the right direction. So they gave us like you should reach out to these stores and these boutiques and um, as a brand, you kind of have the traditional route is you show in a showroom, and whether or not they sell for you, that's kind of like your platform to show your brand to all the retailers in the world, or if you're just doing North America, then North America.
yeah, yeah.
And that's where they place their buy, which is usually, I guess, a year ahead. It's quite far in advance. And if you're lucky enough, you get orders through that, and then you kind of build a relationship with those buyers, and that's the more traditional route. Other brands have been started just on Instagram, and they're direct to consumer, and that's
Right.
worked as well. So it's kind of there's so many avenues you can go.
And I think it also obviously heavily depends on, well, your skill set, your connections, and
mhm,
frankly, your luck. Um,
Yeah, yeah. And what you want?
Timing, yeah, what's hot in
What
the
you?
market, and what's, you're kind of pitching out. And I mean, to your How to Make It in America, great little series.
that's pretty
Right.
much
Yeah,
us.
yeah.
Yeah, I when I think of it, or when I think of you guys, I'm like, what is it like? And that's what I think about. So
Like
yeah,
those the shots of them carrying the rolls of fabric down
yeah,
7th Avenue,
We
that's
have
us.
that. Yeah, like
Yeah.
we've
yeah.
done that. We've like literally put coats on the subway, and we've rented,
Yeah.
um, your box trucks to take stuff around, and
Yeah, yeah.
very, very much hands-on, as I'm
So,
sure you're well aware. So it's a little bit of both of that, but
well,
A lot of hustle.
yeah.
yeah.
Not,
um,
it's definitely not so glamorous. Everyone thinks the fashion industry is glamorous. Just telling you, if you start your own brand,
it,
is the opposite of
it never
glamorous.
is. Well, the glamour goes to the person wearing it, right?
Yeah.
It's for that. You're the one who's suffering. And I think of the same way as food. It's like, so you can have a
Exactly.
very nice meal in a nice restaurant. It's like, yeah, but look in the back, like crazy,
Yeah.
crazy
Yeah,
stuff going on back there. It's a gong
it's
show, but
pretty.
it's very nice and peaceful out here at front. And maybe it's a little bit like that. So
Totally.
are you making something for like ultimately it's a customer, but do you uh, is the buyer and the customer like completely aligned? And I'm gonna take that to the next level of like with
Mm,
all the sustainability and the fabrics and choosing those, but
yeah.
like how much of that do you have to make for the person who's almost just in a store, like say in Holt Renfrew, just trying to fit
Mm,
you into a category that makes sense versus like, hey, I want like the perfect thing for the customer for all these reasons.
It really is a very I was thinking, I was like, let's see how many cliches we can use or not use. But it very much is a delicate balance.
Yeah.
Right. Yeah.
Um,
Okay. Yeah. I hear you.
because it is, I think like any good you're really making, you're gonna have like your standard. We throw back to some business school, kind of your
Yeah.
adopter's curve.
Hmm.
People don't necessarily know what they want or need,
Yeah.
and sometimes they have to be told. And sometimes a really good buyer is one that can see that and time it. Know when it's right for the customer to time it. And sometimes that includes educating the customers that are coming
Hmm.
in. But to your point of what I think it's also for us at least we find fairly difficult because we not only are doing something that is already a fairly difficult category that we've been told by many industry experts.
Hmm.
Outerwear is, should be and typically is one of the most, if not the most expensive piece in your wardrobe. Um,
And the most technical from a tailoring and
Right.
making perspective.
yeah, it's a
It's
long sleeve
expensive.
T-shirt or a jacket is like they
Very
might
It's
look
a
expensive.
big.
similar.
You think about it for a while, don't you? Yeah, it's not just off the cuff, like, yeah, I'll take it, kind of thing,
Yeah,
right?
and
It's
then that
you try it on.
translates
Yeah.
exactly. That translates not into design time, but production time, production cost.
Hmm.
Yeah.
So I guess kind of to the area of looking into, who you're making it for, I think we've had those conversations. Like I think anyone, I'm sure, like yourself and Joy and
Hmm.
lots of folks, where you're like, I know this makes sense to do, and some people are saying, yeah, it's a great idea, and other people are saying, are you nuts? And I mean, one of my favorite things to look back at is when we launched. Basically, the beginning of 2019 was our buying. So we
Hmm.
started the brand before that, but basically we went to market, which is when we talk to buyers.
Yeah.
And one of the buyers for one of the largest retailers in the world 2 years ago is going. We said, oh well, we produce everything sustainably and ethically, and it explained a little bit of what that means. And she goes to me, I don't care if you looked good, I would wear you. So, that was the
Oh,
mentality. And obviously, it's a bit of an outlier, but the general
Yeah.
sentiment from the buying and larger community was okay, well, oh, you guys are doing sustainability. That's, interesting or cute, or
Hmm.
we don't even really know what that is. I mean, fast forward to now, and it's a
It's very
requirement.
different.
Like if you don't have a sustainable story or strategy in place, no matter what industry you're in, you're behind.
so
Hmm.
like, if you do you think, because I'm always curious about that, like, say in food, like, to say, hey, this is organic,
Yeah.
Hmm.
and right beside it you say this is not, and the price is like 30 to 40% more. I still think people go for the cheaper one. Like, they just say, hey, I don't know that I really get there, like,
Yeah.
maybe, but if you made it 10% more, I think I would do. It's sort of a, but everyone has their different price, their point, I guess, and
Yeah.
they're willing to be sustainable or be better quality in some way. Do you guys actually tie it into the product, or is it purely just a, like, we're doing this because it is the right way to do it, and do you think it's kind of worth it? I guess is, you
Well,
know,
I mean, we try. I think both are very important,
yeah,
Hmm.
and you've definitely hit on a really key point of at the
Price.
end of the day, customers pay with their or show their attention with their wallet, right? And they
yeah,
either buy it or don't, and it's very challenging because we try to. I mean, not only are this is kind of one of the interesting things about CAALO is that sustainable luxury outerwear. So you're already at a high category price because it's outerwear. You're producing sustainably and ethically, which, if you're doing right, is significantly
Expensive.
more expensive.
right,
And it is a luxury category. So we not only want to do luxury because it feels nice, but we kind of pay a bit of an homage back to traditional term of luxury, which is you
Hmm.
buy a traditional Louis Vuitton luggage 100 years ago because that thing made it across literally the world and
Hmm.
through ships and carriages, and it stood the test of time. It did not deteriorate. It held up its quality, and it kept your belongings safe. And so I think for us, we want this coat both aesthetically and functionally to last. You know, pass it down to folks, pass it down to family members, and
Hmm.
and live on and not be in a landfill. So I think there's a little bit of that, as well as to your point of organic or non-organic or whatnot. I mean, from a sustainable perspective, we have used materials not only for better of the environment, and things such as like all our down, for example, is responsible down certified. Essentially means they're treated as a the down is a byproduct of the
Hmm.
food industry, and
Ah.
so to us that's very important. And I'm definitely reading more and more of this over the last 5+ years. Of, I mean, I remember being in Mississauga and going to Toronto and sitting on the highway and thinking, this is not only inefficient, but I always had thoughts when I was a kid of, well, can the cars just get hooked up to a little pulley system so they're not all on, or can we get an efficient boat or something to get across on the water?
He's
Like,
describing a train, yes, but
Yeah, you're very much about efficiency
well,
and
yeah,
not not excess. You want things to like function properly.
yeah, and I don't want it to be wasted. And I mean, I think the planet is like a perfect example of something that has a finite set of resources. We should treat it so everyone can enjoy it for as long as possible. So,
I
we're
think for us it was like because fashion is such a wasteful
and polluting
industry
industry.
and it's like
yeah.
one of the biggest polluters in the world, to like sleep well at night, we knew that we had to be on the side like of
Whatever we can to not
yeah.
contribute to the negatives. So,
Yeah, so what's the and I will tie this in a second, but what does you guys think is like the fun part, or what do you really enjoy, I guess, about running this company and doing this as your job?
I think for me, like collaborating with other artists and creative people and, people getting really excited about your product or your idea, whether it's like doing a photo shoot together and having 5 people that you're collaborating with, or you're collaborating with a stylist, or um, even just speaking to the buyers, and when they really get it and they can see like the thought process that went into it, and they can see like how much time was put into your design, it's pretty rewarding. And
Because what you're
it is.
doing is like you're making something that you can then see on people and hey, that looks good. I did a good job. Like it's a rewarding feeling, right?
yeah.
I
Yeah.
mean, last or maybe a couple of weeks ago now, in December, we're walking down the street in New York, and we're both, being good brand ambassadors, wearing our own products.
Looking good
Um,
down the street, yeah.
Yeah.
and to, I guess, a nice little callback to your how to make it in America. But I
Yeah.
mean, I literally had a guy come up to me and said, that jacket's beautiful. And
What
so,
is that?
what is that? And it obviously not only does that just feel amazing on its own, but I
Hmm.
mean, sure enough, he followed up.
Found
He
us.
found us online, and he tried to
Buy your jacket.
buy my jacket. So
Right
it's,
off your back.
yeah, right off my back. And so it's kind of funny how when something like that happens, I don't know. I guess to Chelsea's point, a little bit the Canadian naivete of
Hmm.
like, oh, someone actually wants something that we made, and
Yeah.
it's a combination of
Yeah.
so many people helping us, but also us being like, I don't know what I'm doing.
Yeah.
Why
Yeah,
don't we
yeah, yeah.
try this? And then it sounds like it works, and then sometimes it really works. You're thinking
Yeah.
it's kind of special.
Yeah.
I buy stuff on the mannequin all the time. Like I find myself not very good if I just see it there on a hanger. It's not like I'm just not as excited about it. But if I see it on a mannequin, I'm kind of like, yeah, you know what, that's working. So I tend to try to shop that way if I can. It just saves me a
Yeah.
step almost of trying to have to picture it on myself. Um,
Exactly.
so I see where this guy's coming from. I've never done that before of chasing a guy down the street to try to
Yeah,
buy.
he's very adamant.
Yeah, he was, yeah, very, it was kind of a fun experience. And it's like the fun part is it's like, it's not, fortunately, it hasn't been the only time someone's
Hmm.
kind of reached out.
Yeah.
And for those of you listening that haven't seen any of the CAALO coats, but
Hmm.
we try to make them very kind of designed from a timeless perspective. So it's not, the loudest, biggest, wild print on it. So
Hmm.
it's designed to be very clean, classic, and
Modern.
timeless and modern. And
Yeah,
so
yeah,
it's
yeah,
not
yeah.
something that someone's going to come up because you're like, oh, I like attention. This is an attention getting coat. And so the fact that it's just very kind of subtle and people still come up is
Hmm.
a little smile on the face.
Do you so then do you think you get the same satisfaction? I mean, just going one step back here, the same satisfaction out of, working for a company, working for Lululemon, and
Mhm.
being, part of the design team who designed that same jacket, say for instance, that gets the compliment? Or is there something about it being fully yours? And I'm even thinking that to I think about this even to myself sometimes
Yeah.
about being, a restaurant owner, and it's like, geez, like all I did was put myself. I have all this risk, right? I had to invest the money. There's all these downsides. There's all these things that could happen, and all I did it, and what only I have to carry all that risk and just
Yeah.
hopes that someone really resonates with someone. But I could still kind of get a lot of that out of just working for a company, getting a steady paycheck, and kind of not taking all those risks. Do you ever think about that? And ever,
Yeah. I mean,
yeah, wish you maybe
all
not
the
didn't have
time.
that burden?
All the time.
Anytime the credit card bills due,
Right? All the credit card, you're just like,
I mean, it's a
stupid.
very
Why did I do
large,
this?
yeah, very large investment, which I'm
Yeah.
sure you know very well. I think like any business when you're starting out, and if you're not backed by a parent company and you're independently owned, there's like so much risk financially and just, I mean, we've put years now of time into this, and it's definitely grass is always greener. Now, when I look back, I'm like, wow, I had so much time when I designed for other companies. And yet I never realized that then. I thought, people always complain about their jobs and like
it's like
nine to
everything's
five,
busy and
we're so busy. But starting a brand from scratch, it's a lot of like sleepless nights, almost like having a baby or something. It's just all encompassing. And I mean, a lot of our friends we haven't seen for a long time. And the people that we do are kind of the ones that are like involved in the brand and
Right.
for better or for worse. And so, yeah, grass is always greener. I mean, I think it's definitely way more fulfilling hearing a customer or a buyer or even a family friend being like, literally, this is my favorite coat that I've ever bought. And like the thoughtfulness that went into it, I can see like, and every time I wear it, I get compliments. Like that's huge. Whereas when I worked for a big corporate brand, there's just so many more hands that go into it. It's not
Yeah. And
it's
so many
not
more products
100%
probably too.
yours. Yeah, you're a
Yeah.
part
Yeah.
of the
Yeah.
process, but
Yeah.
there's a whole team behind it. And even with us, there's a team, but when you're small, not only as a company, but you're, scrappy when you're using as met getting
yeah,
stretching just like you guys, right? Stretching every penny as much as you can. You end up doing a lot of things yourself. And
yeah,
so sometimes um it takes a lot longer, but it's
more,
it's more economical that way.
Yeah.
But you really get a true feeling, and I think that's one of the big things, just at a more of a macro sense, is you really get a really good sense of kind of like empathy as well for everyone else that's involved in something,
yeah,
because you understand, oh, that's what it takes to make a small change on. We want to
hmm,
move a button. As one of the things that I was trying to do it early in the process, I was like, well, why can't we just add a button here? And Chelsea's like, you can't just add a button.
This is
It's like a whole thing, and we have to update the pattern, and that has to get reprinted, and then there's a new
regraded.
regrade it, which is
Yeah,
the process of going from, you make essentially a smaller medium, and then you grade it, which is print out copies that go to
mhm,
larger, smaller sizes. And there's a whole process behind that, and that's one of the things I've learned a lot over the last couple of years is what it really takes, and kind of the real butterfly effect of a lot of design decisions.
what's it like? The two of you just sort of mentioned disagreeing on buttons, but I'm sure there's more of that.
Snaps
Um,
as well.
like so Jordan,
yeah,
you work, you have like a full-time job
yeah,
otherwise,
Yes.
and Chelsea, but you're all in, right?
yeah. I'm all
This,
in. I think
so
I don't know how you would do it without having at least one person
yeah,
working full time.
yeah,
As you
yeah,
know, like starting a business, it's just so time consuming, especially when like we don't outsource our PR or sales, like we're doing it all ourselves.
yeah. I was gonna ask
Um,
that. Yeah, you were doing it. Nothing else. It's just I guess the
we
making of it.
outsource production parts that are
Yeah,
really specific, but we try to take on as much as we can, like from web design to
But
advertising. And obviously, we've had so many people help us along the way.
yeah,
But
yeah.
yeah, I'm definitely all in. And
So
you're
so
wearing many, many, many hats.
So how does it work then? Do you, like, you say, okay, here, Jordan, here's what I didn't finish today. So do these things, and like, or is it
It's
just a pure
more,
division of like, you're in charge of this, you're in charge of that. Let me know if you need help, kind of thing.
yeah.
Yeah, it's well, we couldn't say this is what I didn't get done because that list is infinite.
Yeah.
Because
Yeah.
neither of us, there's, as you know, you're a small company. There's the amount of ideas that we have far and
Yeah.
way exceeds the
Yeah.
amount of time and resources we have to execute on them. And sometimes we're like, yeah, if we were, largely funded or something like that, we could grow this exponentially faster. We
Quickly.
could, I
Yeah.
mean, there's so many ideas that even things we've teased in the market and folks have
Yeah.
seen samples, they wanted to buy them, but we just don't have the time to get around to producing them from like
Hmm.
Yeah.
a true mass production side. So, I mean, it really comes down to, frankly, I think any like kind of the startup podcasts or
Hmm.
books, they all mention, you're just putting out fires, and it is really
Hmm.
the truth. So it's kind of there's always a list and a huge list of what's got to get done. So what has to get done at the top priority? And
I think
so
you're really good at that because I'm so in it that he can look at it from like a upward kind of view and be like, okay, you really need to just concentrate on this. And like that other thing that you're focusing on is actually probably like not a priority for this week. And so it's like a constant prioritization of what needs to get done today versus next week. And then also, I think you're good at being like, well, what's the high level stuff that we need to concentrate on, like branding and our voice and our platform with like Instagram and like really trying to grow that. So,
but then it goes
whereas
down.
I'm more like design focused and the functional and the like actual production side of it, there's so many components that go into that.
And that's where it's so hard on the design side because it's you can always tweak and refine a design, and so it's arguably never done.
Mhm.
And so you could spend an infinite amount of time on it. So that's been one of the real hard parts of, when do you call it done? And we have
Mhm.
Yeah.
we're both very, yeah,
Perfectionist.
very particular on things and how they get done. And so we don't want to do the this is good enough, move on. And obviously that's what a lot of people tell you to do.
Yeah.
So finding that balance of, calling it done and realizing some things you can iterate on. We put up our web store relatively quickly,
Yeah.
and it's like that's one of the things that's been on our list that we got to redo. But
Mhm.
what we have to do is we have to file our taxes. We have
Yeah.
to pay our
Fun
sales
stuff.
tax, and that's one of the things that, to Chelsea's credit, with a design background, she's become a little QuickBook expert, and it's like one of those things that you
So
can't.
fun.
We tried to kind of functionalize those things, I think, at the beginning because I
Yeah.
have obviously a little bit more expertise
In
and
business.
background there, but it just doesn't work
Yeah.
when sometimes meetings happen and you need to get something done. And other times, I guess to my earlier point, it really gives you a different viewpoint on, okay, well, if you from a design side, you can see the dollars that go into something that'll inform your design decision. And
Hmm.
then for me to see the design side and allowing us to kind of collaborate a little bit on some of the design aspects, I think we end up ultimately with
A
a
better product.
much better product. Yeah.
Yeah. Because there's a lot of things that he'll be like, well, why can't we just do that? And I'm like, it's a great idea, but that's going to cost so much, like from a pattern drafting, like that we won't make any money on that design. And you're like, well, why? Why
Yeah.
can't we? Like, I really think this is a good idea. So it is actually nice having a like outsider perspective in the sense that you're not traditionally
Trained.
trained in design. It's actually a plus. I think if you had two designers that were starting a brand together, it's just you're canceling each other out versus having someone that has totally different skill set but still understands what good design looks like is like I think part of why we've been so successful. And you'll push stuff and you can look at it from a business side as well, whereas I've been more trained just in design and what looks aesthetically pleasing and how it functions and how it fits and all of that. So
Yeah.
that would be my recommendation for sure if someone was starting out a
Well, it's the
brand
biggest.
is to have, or any company really, is to
Yeah.
have a partnership that you have different skill sets.
Yeah, I've actually found that with our business, like we're in a bunch of new things now, and
Yeah.
honestly, just asking other people, people, especially given COVID, they're just, I think one, they just want to talk, but two,
Yeah.
they're just also very helpful. They're like, oh, you're asking me, yeah, yeah, you want my expertise, and so just even asking things, you don't even know what the right question is, or you don't know how
Yeah.
someone can help you, but because you sort of ask it, you may end up in a place where you're like, oh man, I'm glad I did that. Like that's a good, I just didn't even know that, and you just tend to not know. So what I guess what I'm getting at is I've definitely learned that over the last year. Like just
Mhm.
it's crazy what, as smart as you are, don't know. There's just a ton of things that just you
Yeah.
don't even think about, and someone else can just provide this very obvious, like, oh yeah, I should just do that, or yeah, that's a great tip. I should go check out this service,
I think
or
that's
whatever it
like a
might
good
be.
point in the sense that having this company has really like reaffirmed my I don't know, I guess like my view on humans. So many people have stepped up and been like so kind and went out of their way to help us. And it hasn't been just like us two doing this brand. There's been so many other people that have, yeah, gone out of their way to give us their expertise. And that's made it so much more successful for sure.
Yeah.
And you're kind of like, wow, like people actually do care. Because I think sometimes when you work in a corporate company, everyone's in their own like silo or department, and it's more like, how much can you get away with without
Yeah,
having to
yeah,
do
and
stuff for
not
other
stepping on
people?
toes versus helping
Yeah,
someone. You're like, oh, they should know what they're doing. They're in charge of such and such. Like it's not. It's a very different.
Yeah.
yeah.
I totally find that. So what would you guys characterize as like your goal for the business? I mean, you're obviously striving towards something. I never really, and part of the how to make it in America, I mean, you just never really know what their ultimate kind of goal or where they're really trying to get to. It's just more, I guess. But um, do you guys think about that and like where you're trying to get to?
Yeah, I think it definitely also ebbs and flows a little bit because you look at kind of what's your, the traditional, what's your 1, 3, 5, whatever your
Yeah.
plan. When we don't have something as kind of concrete and prescriptive as that.
Hmm.
But in general, I think well, we want it to be wide enoughly known and available to folks that you have an option to go. You don't have to go with the cookie cutter options that are been around for years in the outerwear world, and that they are, can be sustainable and ethical. And I think kind of growing it to a place where it is known as that kind
Hmm.
of this unique blend of kind of functional luxury in the world today that is allowing it to be a little bit more available. And then I think also, personally, something that's, if we can at one point again be able to see our friends and have a vacation and whatnot, then I
And
think that'd be a good end goal to get at a place where it sustains itself at that
yeah,
level.
and grow the team, like be able to bring
Yeah.
on experts that can really flourish. Like it would be amazing to have a slightly bigger team and mentor people and really get it to be the
Yeah,
company that we've envisioned. So it's
Yeah.
baby steps. I mean, we definitely like we're lucky enough to already be like selling in Japan and like in North America, and like we've had a good reach so far, but we're also very small, and we've just kind of like the ball started rolling and we went with it. And so I
Right.
think with COVID, it's been able to kind of put the brakes on some things and reflect on like, okay, what do we really want the next couple years to look like? And like, what is that growth? And I think it's definitely being in more stores because that helps even just from a production side. Like, you get to a point where you're producing way more units, and so you have a bit more flexibility with who you work with from like a
Right.
factory perspective, and then your prices per piece become lower. So obviously there's more problems that come along with growth as well, so it's just
you're trading some for others, but yeah, I think getting it to
Yeah.
a
Yeah.
little bit
Yeah.
it
more
could be.
scalable perspective. And I think actually you hit a really good point, Chelsea. we have so many ideas that we want to work with people on,
Mm-hmm.
and we just don't have the time or resources to do those now. And there's so many things, and we have, as Chelsea was saying, fortunate enough to be working with folks that have helped us, and we want to be able to, help them more and help
Mm-hmm.
grow our team to be able to do these things. Because, I mean, we'll see little ideas here and there, and they're not quite the same, but we'll be like, oh, well, we had that idea a year ago, and we think our idea was better, but
Mm-hmm.
we still don't even have time to get around to
Execute it.
execute it.
Yeah.
So
So
at
what?
that point, does it matter because they were able to get it out? So
Yeah.
that's
Yeah.
that's what matters.
Yeah.
Yeah, no, a lot of what you're saying kind of resonates with me. It's just you can kind of do everything, and you just need to sort of find that place, I think, where
Yeah.
you enjoy what you're doing, and because a lot, big part of it is the journey. It's not like there's some place where I really want to get to, where it's like, okay, here, then I will be happy. It's like, no, I
Right.
think I need to figure out how I can be happy now, and how
Mm-hmm.
there's going to be trade-offs. There's going to be things that I don't get done or that I can't accomplish, but it's okay because I also need to take a break, and I also need to do other things, and I, eventually I'm going to be, realize I'm 60 years old, and it just kind of blew by, right? And
Mm-hmm.
we're only so young for so long. So I don't know, I kind of try to hold on to some of those things sometimes.
Yeah.
Well, that's really hard. I think you're
Yeah.
exactly right though, Greg. It's like that's
Mm-hmm.
time can fly really easily. So
Yeah.
getting to a point where you can enjoy it. I mean, I definitely really enjoy working with like great people, and I think that's a lot of it. For me, is that interaction with people and being able to spend your time doing something that you all like and you're all proud of,
Mm-hmm.
um, versus necessarily kind of pushing, widgets for a paycheck type of thing. I think that's kind of the difference.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, having so yeah, I definitely reflect on that as well, of hey, I only have so much time to work as well, and I'm going to
Yeah,
be working. I know I'm doing that. That's inevitability. If I can find something that I truly enjoy, then that
right.
is all the more meaningful, I guess.
I think that whole area actually is kind of funny because I look at it and I think of our, kind of general age and demographic. It's like we kind of, I'm curious what you think, Greg, but we kind of grew up in a half analog, half digital world, I feel like. And
Yeah.
it's kind of very, there's not going to be another generation like that. And I feel like over the last 5+ years, it's been the quit your grueling day job and go
Mm-hmm.
become whatever your dreams are has been kind of the mentality. And so you have kids coming up now saying, well, why am I going to spend, especially in places like America, um, crippling debt amounts of money on
Mm-hmm.
an education that is semi-relevant, and then just go into what I want to do because I have the platforms now to be able to do things. And I think I'm not saying one is better than the other or one's right, but I find it interesting how we, at least on our side here, try to balance the pros on both of those and minimize the cons. And curious, what you think of that with the restaurant.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, I think it's interesting because there are so many different jobs that didn't exist.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Like there's so many jobs that are now getting created because of the way we can do things. It seems like in many ways silly to work a job that you don't like
Right.
Mm-hmm.
in hopes that one day you will, I don't know, have fun and not, like it just seems silly. Like just okay, figure what you want and what you
Mm-hmm.
enjoy doing, and go do that. You can probably make money doing it somehow or another. And do you need millions of dollars? No, probably not. Can you make a living and make your rent, and if you're enjoying yourself, that's what's important. So I think that can kind of happen to us. I think people though now are maybe potentially over trying to go after, hey, this guy on Instagram is doing this, let me go do that, and
Mm-hmm.
because working in an office just is not very Instagrammable. But I think adding some context behind it and some of the reality and whatever, and even that's part of the podcast. I think is living vicariously through other people, and you guys have put so much into this sort of understanding. Hey, what did you guys go through? It can be helpful if people are looking at different options in their careers or deciding, hey, I want to go do the thing that I always wanted to do or not. And young people who are just trying to decide, hey, what should I do with this life of mine to make it worth it? So
Yeah.
yeah, it's kind of all those things that start rolling in your head. And I don't know. I think the more you can talk to people and the more you can learn, I think the more informed you can be about doing it. But ultimately, in the end, you just kind of have to do it. You
Yeah.
can always go back to the office or always go work for a big company at the end if you want to. I don't know.
Exactly.
I think
I,
I
about it.
would say though, I think it's beneficial to work for a company,
Yeah, you
at
learn a
least
lot.
for fashion,
Yeah.
work for a company if you're designing before you go out on your own, because there's just so many, there's so many things that could go wrong if you don't have a background in like production and how to tailor something and um yeah, so I
there's been
think
folks that have asked, kind of, we ask friends for advice on areas that we don't know. As Chelsea mentioned, like one of
mm,
our friends is really skilled on the sales side and guided us where to go with that. And
yeah,
conversely, we've had folks reach out and ask Chelsea, can you take a look at my, like, they have their own brand, and
yeah,
can you take a look at my designs and production? And
yeah,
within 5 minutes, Chelsea can be like, well, this is good, but you're frankly getting ripped off here, and
yeah,
this is taking way longer than this
Yeah.
should. And
yeah.
that advice is,
And this person's taking you for a ride,
yeah,
like you shouldn't have paid them thousands of dollars to do that. So there is some benefit, but I think it's good to have that base, whether that's a couple years working for a company, or for me I was like I need 10 years and then I feel confident enough to go
Right.
out on my own. And having a bit of a safety net, I would say. Like, say we definitely saved up a lot to start this. So, but you kind of have to just do it, as you say, and you're never going to be completely prepared
yeah.
to be an entrepreneur
No,
'cause
yeah.
you're
Eventually, you're
always
just gonna
gonna
become
bounce
too old.
back.
Yeah, you don't want to do it when you're too old, and it's the American dream, right? That's why you guys moved to to New York
Yeah,
to
it's
live
a
it
land of
and
opportunity and
right,
crippling debt all at once.
right. How could you not give it a shot, right? So yeah, no, I kind of how I think about it. Yeah, well, thanks for joining me on the podcast. I learned a lot about the design industry. I didn't know a whole lot, um, and just hearing the backstory, I think, and how passionately you guys speak about what you're doing, it's really cool. I will link up to your Instagram and some of the pictures so people can actually see what we're talking about here. But yeah, I really appreciate you joining me on the podcast.
Thanks so much.
Well, great chatting
Thanks.
with
Well, thanks for listening. If you haven't actually seen the jackets that we were talking about there, the name of the company is CAALO. I will link in the show notes at lifetimeatwork.com where you can see a few of the pictures and maybe watch a video, just in case you're curious about what this is all about. Until next time, don't worry, be happy.